Hi, Caleb with Brownells here. In today's quick tip, we're going to be talking about using offset red dot sights on your AR-15. Now, I was kind of skeptical to do this video, to be honest with you, because it was just that you guys have so many opinions on this thing, it's crazy. So I actually made a post on my social media and was like, hey, what do you guys think, pros or cons? And some of you guys love this thing, and most of you guys kind of hate it. So let's get into it and talk about it and go over some of the pros and cons. And I'm not going to say you should be running one and it's right for you, and I'm not going to say it's terrible. But at the end of this video, you should be able to make a decision of whether or not you would actually benefit from using one. So let's jump right into it. So what I have right here actually is a Leupold DeltaPoint that is mounted on an Arasaka mount. And the reason I kind of did this is because there are offset mounts that kind of mount your red dot on the side here that mount via Picatinny or 1913 rail, but they're much bulkier than this setup. This is probably about as streamlined as you can get because you're mounting directly onto a plate on the offset mount. And I think if you are going to do it, that this is definitely the way to go to keep everything as slim and compact as possible. And there are mounts that get it a little bit lower to the gun as well. But those are actually harder to use, so you got to kind of find that sweet spot of where to put the optic. So pros and cons, let's just jump right into it, is cost. You're adding money to your gun, and you're adding a whole nother optic. I mean, you could go anywhere from, you could spend $1,000 on red dot optics and mounts to get this thing on here. Obviously, we didn't do that here. You can go a more affordable option. There's a red dot sight nowadays in pretty much every price point. I mean, if you look at stuff like the Holosun, Swampfox, those are two really good affordable options that are actually good quality optics. And they mount on RMR footprints for the most part. So you can just throw those on RMR plates, which is awesome. So I know I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but that's, one con of it, but I mean, it's not a huge con because, like I said, there's something for everyone's price range. Another con is going to be weight. Regardless of which one you get, you're adding weight to your gun no matter what. And with that weight, it comes more snag factor. Obviously, I have another piece of equipment on my gun here that I can get snagged on stuff. And I know you're looking at it right now and you're kind of scratching your head and you're like, yeah, I hope this guy's left-handed or he has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, I'm left-handed because if I was right-handed, this would be super awkward to use. But yeah, so this is set up for left eye dominance, obviously. And the way you would actually use it is, well, I guess we should actually talk about how to use the optic if we're going to talk about the optic. But yeah, so main optics up here. I'll get this out the way because that is now in the way. Alright. So shooting with your main optic, you need to make a transition to a close target, and you need to do it quickly. So, even if I'm on 1 power, but let's say I'm on 5, I'll throw it up to 5, and I need to transition to a close target, I can then just tilt the rifle, and I still have cheek weld on my stock, which is, for me, a huge pro of running an offset like this. So I still have cheek weld, so I'm still able to maintain that control of the rifle and just shoot close targets, both eyes open, no problem. So even if, and I know people are going to say, if you need an offset sight, you chose the wrong optic to begin with, and I think that's just not true. So I'm running a Brownells MPO 1:8, okay? So yes, I have a 1 power option here, so why would I want an offset sight? That seems silly, right? I'm going to tell you why. Because anytime you're running an optic with a long tube like this, even though it's 1 power, it's still going to take more time to acquire a target because you're acquiring it through this long tube. It's going to take more time to do that than it is with just this short window here. And that's just a fact. That's not me being opinionated on the thing. That's a fact of how your eyes and optics work. So, I mean, depending on, of course, it depends on how you train. You got to practice with an offset sight. You can't just throw it on there and magically be proficient with it. You got to practice with it. With all that being said, obviously, it's even more beneficial if you pair your offset red dot with something that's even higher magnification, like a 2.5 to 10 or 3 to whatever you want. And then you can go with something that has a larger objective on it, and then you have better low light performance there, and you still have that close range capability. Now, let's go over another obvious con to this. And for people like me that shoot left and right-handed, this is only going to be a left-hand optic, or if you're right-handed, it's only going to be a right-hand optic. Because there's really no good way, like if you're shooting around a right corner on your non-dominant eye, there's really no good way to get and use this optic well. Because if you do use it, you're gonna have to put your stock so it's coming off the edge of your shoulder, the gun's tilted away from you. It's just, there's no good way to do it, no matter how much you practice with it. It's not gonna be a good way to go about it. So a workaround to that is just not to do it. If you're gonna be shooting around right corners, you're just gonna have to suck it up and use your primary optic, and that's kind of how it's gonna have to be. So, but another thing we'll talk about real quick here is piggyback optics. And that's basically just when you take a red dot optic and mount it on top of your scope rings, or even with an offset on your scope ring, so it's up here. Now, the reason I like the offset better than that is because whenever you're doing a piggyback, you end up losing your cheek weld. You have to come up way off of the top of the stock to use it. And for me, that's just, some people like it, that's cool, but for me, that's definitely a no-go. If you're running night vision, that's definitely the way to go about it. So it's a good option there, because using an offset with night vision, that's another con. It's not very doable, but piggybacks with night vision are the way to go. But at the same time, I probably still wouldn't do it, because if I'm running night vision and I'm shooting close targets, I'm just going to rely on an IR laser anyway, like a PEC 15, D-ball, MAL, something like that. So that's a kind of a pro and con there, but really I would just use different equipment for that specific purpose. So whenever you're slinging your rifle, this is kind of the last thing we'll get into here, because we could really talk about this all day. I'm just kind of hitting the high points. But whenever you're slinging your rifle, when it's on my front, it's slung in front of me, no big deal. My optic's not really snagging on anything. Whenever I throw it onto my back, depending on what I'm brushing up against, it can potentially snag on stuff, getting in and out of vehicles and whatnot. But as long as you're using a good optic on a decent mount, it's really not a huge snag factor. Like this Leupold DeltaPoint here, it's nice and curved everywhere, so it's a con, but it's not a huge one. I think it's one that's really overplayed in people's minds. It's not as big of a deal as a lot of people make it out to be on the internet. I'm looking at you, Facebook. All right. So, with all that being said, you have some pros and cons there. Do I think it's practical? Yes, I do. I just kind of mounted this one on my rifle for this video and played with it a little bit, and I kind of started to like it. Before this video, I never really used them. This is my closing statement, guys. Stay with me, okay? So before this video, I never really used them that much, and I kind of started doing some research and using them on my rifle, playing with them, slinging it while I have all my gear on and stuff, and just kind of seeing, what that snag factor actually is. I don't really notice the weight difference. I actually work out with my gear on and stuff, and I'm fit, because if you're not fit, you're gonna die. That's what our buddy Mike says anyway. So with all that being said, if you like or hate this setup, let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.